The thing I'm about to talk about, you're either going to care about and have an opinion on it, or you're not going to care at all. And me talking to you is probably not going to change your mind, right? And I've found this with myself. If I recommend a book to you, I know it's a good book because I've already read it and there's a reason I'm recommending it. But chances are you don't want to read it. And I don't know what this is called, whether there's some cognitive bias that causes this, but I've noticed it in myself. If somebody recommends a book to me, and it'll be a friend that's like very similar to me on the same page, he knows I'm looking into sleep or diet or something, and he'll go, "Oh, bro, you should check this book out." And I think it's the same with a lot of different things, like music. If somebody says, "Oh, this new band's really cool," you don't really want to check them out because you seem late to the game. You want to discover someone new. And it's the same with popular movies and best-selling books. You see it and you think, "Oh, well, 50,000 people have already read this. I want to get the new thing." So just bear that in mind, that you'll already have an opinion, but keep an open mind to this. And I'll cut to the chase. The point I'm making is that you should buy your food from local farmers and local farm shops. Now, this is what I mean with you're already going to have an opinion. You're either somebody that already does this, or you just buy your food from the supermarket and you don't care where it comes from. The apples could come from, I don't know, Spain. If you look at the where your food comes from, the location it was grown and farmed, it would be all over the planet. Just a basket full of food for a week's shopping, it would be all over the planet. So you either care about that or you don't. And if you already buy from a local farm, then I'm not talking to you. I'm preaching to the converted, and you know the score. But this is a transition that I've made, and it's like a spectrum. You either couldn't care less and you'll have produce from all over the planet, or you are very strict with it and you really like to get as many locally sourced items as you can. And for myself, I started off just buying it from wherever, supermarket, didn't even look at the location. Then I started looking at where it's grown and where it's produced. Then I learned about food quality and why you would want organic over commercially farmed foods. And then I got into the more grass-fed side of things. So in Tesco, and this is where marketing gets a bit strange, because in Tesco you can buy Tesco Finest foods. Now the word finest is just a marketing word. Finest doesn't actually mean anything. But you can buy Tesco Organic, which does mean something. It means that food wasn't grown with pesticides, herbicides and chemicals. So that actually means something. That means the food's organic. So you could pay extra for a Tesco Finest product, and it's worse than an organic product. So I don't know why Tesco Finest exists. It should just be organic. You're either eating commercially farmed or organic, and there's a benefit to eating organic. Tesco Finest just means more expensive as far as I can tell. It's not better quality. So I decided I wanted to get grass-fed beef, and the only place I could get that was a local farm, and it happened to be 5 minutes down the road, high quality food. I'm supporting local farmers. So I didn't approach it in the beginning that, oh, I should buy local because it supports local farmers. I did it because it's the only place I could buy this food that I wanted. I couldn't get it from Tesco. They don't sell grass-fed beef. They sell organic, but not grass-fed. So this was a selfish thing. I'm not saying do this out of altruism to help local farmers. But once you do it, once you go into a farm shop and you see the animals and you see the quality of the food and you talk to the farmers themselves, you think, oh damn, this is an important thing. We just take it for granted. You go to the supermarket, the food's on the shelves, and then you buy it, and then you don't see who's involved. But there are a few reasons why I now value farmers and the ability to buy local food so highly. And one is, about a year ago, last summer, I got an allotment, right? And on allotment you usually grow veg mainly, some fruit, and some flowers. But I normally do things a little bit different. So I don't grow any veg, and I'm a carnivore, so it didn't make much sense to me. I grow a little bit of fruit. I grow some strawberries. I've got a couple of apple trees and things like that. But even now I don't eat veg, so I'm strict carnivore. I used to eat meat and fruit, but now I just eat meat. So it's pointless me growing fruit. But I like the apple trees. So I got this allotment, and I decided I wanted to grow flowers anyway. So I grow roses, dahlias, sunflowers, poppies, all kinds of flowers, and I enjoy doing that. It's like a hobby. But what I learned while doing it, because my friends and family also have allotments and they grow veg, is how difficult it is to produce food, how long it takes, and just that it's a very hard thing and farmers have to do it. And for example, the guy with a plot next to me, Roy, he grows loads of potatoes, and one year he had all these rows, it's like a massive plot full of potatoes, and they all got some disease, potato rot or whatever, I don't know what it's called, and none of his potatoes were edible. So if he relied on that, he's hungry. So it really brought home the point, and I've had it with the things that I grow. You put dahlia tubers in, and they shoot up, and you think, oh, I'm going to have really nice dahlias, and then the slugs just eat it all. So that's another point, and I did use slug pellets briefly until the guy on the plot next to me said that's really bad for the environment, and I buy organic food, so I thought, yeah, don't be a hypocrite. But when you buy organic foods, those farmers are solving problems. Like, it's really hard to stop things eating your crops. So how organic farmers do it, I don't know. There's obviously techniques. So that was one reason. I actually tried to grow my own food. And take, for example, apples. If you go to the supermarket and buy apples, you can buy apples 365 days a year. Well, I think Tesco closes on Christmas, but you know what I mean. You can buy apples all year round. There's always apples on the shelves. You don't have to worry about the apples going bad, the apple trees dying, or things attacking the apple tree. Well, I've got 2 apple trees, and one of them, all of the leaves got covered in this disease, and most of the apples got eaten by either birds or they had like earwigs eating the apples from the inside. So off of a full apple tree, I probably got 10 apples. And out of the whole year, the apples are only on that apple tree for about a month, or even a couple of weeks that you can actually harvest it. The strawberry plants I've got in, it's a handful of strawberries, so to actually provide for yourself. Now I'm not trying to, this isn't like a small holding, I literally just do it as a hobby. I like growing plants, and I've learnt a lot about how food is produced. But what I have learnt is it's not easy, and we rely on farmers, and they provide an important service. So if you go to a farm shop and start buying food from them, you'll think, you'll value them a little bit higher. Then try and grow your own food and provide for yourself. It's almost impossible. If you said, I'm only going to eat what I grow, you'll be very hungry. So that's another reason why I value them now, because I think, these are important. If I didn't have this, I would starve. Well, I probably wouldn't starve, I would solve the problem, but it's very difficult. Another reason is, I think farmers are undervalued, and I undervalued them, but now I see it from the other side, and I'm just trying to encourage you to see it from the other side. And that is that farmers, I think there's quite a high rate of poor mental health and farmers unaliving themselves. I'm not saying certain words because YouTube don't like it, but farmers really do struggle, and they work very long hours, and I think it's quite a lonely job. And they're a very highly valued part of society. They're integral, and it's like nobody even cares about them, and there's poor mental health associated with it. And I think during the during the pandemic, we had the Canadian truck strikes, And now there's farmers kicking off with protests all over Europe. And I don't really look at the news and I don't look too far into it, but I can imagine the government is making it difficult for farmers to do their job. I know a little bit about the situation. And I heard this in an interview somewhere. This wasn't my thought, but I've pondered on it, and it kind of struck me. The person said, two industries, if they just stopped overnight, the world would it would be like apocalypse instantly. So he said if all truck drivers and all farmers decided tomorrow they weren't going to go to work, within 3 days society would collapse. And I thought about that, and you think truck drivers, when was the last time, when in the UK, when the pandemic was a thing, we had something where we would clap for the NHS. I think it was a Thursday night, clap for the NHS for the work they were doing. And when was the last time you considered clapping for a truck driver? You see the lorries on the motorways and they just deliver the food to the supermarkets and we take it for granted. But if they didn't do that, within 3 days, we know what happened during the supply shocks for the corona pandemic. As soon as there weren't things on shelves, even toilet roll, that is not an essential. Within 3 days, people were panic buying toilet roll, and it had a knock-on effect where there was no supply because everyone's taking more than they need. So if truck drivers stop driving, within 3 days society collapsed. If farmers stop farming, within 3 days everybody's starving and fighting for food. So the point is, these are highly valuable people that are completely undervalued. And I undervalued them. You go to Tesco, you take it for granted. There's always beef on the shelves. There's always fruit and veg. But then when you see the local farmer and you think, this is a hard industry, do you know what I mean? And I'm sure there are very profitable farmers. But I've heard stories where farmers are losing money, so they're pouring milk down the drain. Dairy farmers produce a load of milk and we buy it in from other countries and compete with our own local farmers, so they're pouring milk down the drain. That to me is just a systemic issue that I think is crazy. And the same goes for other types of I don't claim to know anything about farming, but I've heard that other farms, it's more profitable, or the government is incentivising them to rewild their land. So instead of growing food or raising animals, they're just telling them, we'll pay you X amount. I think they're subsidised to just grow, essentially let it go to wasteland and let the nature sort of come back in. But anyway, the point is, look at the label. Where does your food come from? You might live in the UK and you're buying this tomatoes from Spain, apples from Portugal, and these are all flying from all over the place. Or not flying, they're being shipped in, when you could buy those locally. So I hope you kind of get the point of, if you start to actually think about and see where your food comes from, you might value these people a little bit more. So my point is, everybody's valuable, but certain industries are critical, and if they don't operate, then society falls apart. And if that's the case, you should reward these people highly. So I know everybody makes the argument of, why do footballers get paid so much? Because they just kick a ball around. And it's due to the fact that they've got a lot of eyes on them and they produce a lot of revenue. So I get that. I don't think underpaid footballers, they entertain a lot of people, fair enough. But farmers, if you have farmers that are considering unaliving themselves, if you have farmers that are suffering with poor mental health, these are the most valuable people in our society. So that seems crazy to me. Farmers should be like rock stars. And I'll give BBC Radio 1 credit for this. They always... I used to listen to Radio 1 when I would drive around for work. And I would hear them shout out young farmers a lot. And I was like, that seems a bit weird that they're singling out young farmers. And I kind of know now that it's because they're an important part of society. Shout out young farmers. Young farmers should be like... like pop stars walk down the, oh, that's that guy there is a farmer. And I think Jeremy Clarkson's show, and is it Caleb, the guy off of that, has done a lot for this. It showed how hard it is to farm and made him kind of like a rock star. But yeah, I think farmers, truck drivers, there are plenty of valuable industries, but they should be rewarded as so. The other point is, and this is more of a bro science, I haven't heard this anywhere, this is just something my brain come up with, is I've been getting into grounding and earthing, so that's being barefoot in the ground and being exposed to the energy transfer that happens when you do that. We all walk around with rubber-soled shoes on, we're in cars that are on rubber tyres, and if you think about it, we've got pavements. When was the last time you was barefoot in the ground? And you can look into the health benefits associated with that. So if you're not barefoot in the ground, there are negative effects. And you've never dissipated that energy, that energetic charge. So when it comes to locally sourced food, I just had the thought that it's kind of like a grounding, an extra grounding practice. So I live on the Isle of Wight, and your brain and your body is very clever at knowing where you are positioned on the earth. So just by the colour temperature of the sun, it will know what time of day it is. Just by the magnetic field of the earth. Like, it knows exactly where we are. There's GPS kind of at play, like a biological GPS. It's like your body clock. It just knows what time of day it is. That's why you can wake up at 6 a.m. every morning without an alarm, or you wake up just before your alarm goes off. So my point is, I live on the Isle of Wight. I'm eating grass-fed beef from a local farm that was raised 5 minutes down the road. That cow is exposed to sunlight and is grounded in the earth and is eating the grass from the Isle of Wight. So when I eat that food, I'm essentially eating a bit of the Isle of Wight. I'm like consuming the Isle of Wight in the form of, it was soil, then it was grass, then it was a cow, then I eat a steak. So that's got to have a positive effect on me being in connection with the earth and the place where I live. So if you compare that to you having an apple from Portugal, tomatoes from Spain, something else is flown in from is shipped in from the Philippines, your body is going to get all this different nutrition from all around the world, and it won't really know where you are positioned. Now this is a very out there, more of a spiritual thought, but it's something I've been thinking about, and I don't know whether it's occurred to any of you guys. You're probably, I mean, I'm trying to get you out of supermarkets into local farms. Now I'm talking about, yeah, don't worry about it. But that's just something I have thought about, and I like that. I like the fact that I am supporting local farmers. I'm consuming a little bit of where I live, and I'm grateful for where I live, so that's important to me. If you don't care, you just take it for granted, buy food from here, there, can have pesticides on it, it don't matter, then that's kind of a different mindset. But boys, hope that makes sense, and let me know, do you care? Do you even bother? Do you just go supermarket? Because that was me until about 2 years ago. And I think once you've seen it, you can't unsee it, sort of thing. But yeah, let me know what you think. Chop wood, carry water. Speak to you tomorrow.